Hi, this is Dwyer from GamblersAdvisory.com. Once in a while, a fight comes along where I have to disagree with popular opinion and the pundits. In the super middleweight tournament, boxing legend Bernard Hopkins was asked who he thought had a legitimate shot of winning the tournament. He actually named middleweight champion Arthur Abraham. Now, Abraham is an excellent fighter. He is an unbeaten fighter. He is scheduled to fight in Germany, his first fight against American Jermain Taylor. Now, YouTube fans may recall that I took Carl Froch against Jermain Taylor, and that I have been critical of Taylor because I don't believe Taylor is a counterpuncher. I don't believe Jermain Taylor pays attention to the nuances of the sport. I also believe that Corey Spinks beat Jermain Taylor. In fact, I also believe that Jermain Taylor was lucky to escape with a draw against Winky Wright. Now, that said, knowing that Taylor doesn't keep his chin tucked, that Taylor is offensive, that Taylor could have done a better job against Carl Froch in the later rounds, and in my opinion, could have beaten Kelly Pavlik in the first fight. No, feeling all of that, I believe based on styles, and I understand Arthur Abraham is undefeated, and I understand he's likely to be favored in this fight. I believe based on styles, Jermain Taylor is a live underdog in this fight against Arthur Abraham. It comes down to styles. If you look at Arthur Abraham's recent fights, in fact, if you look at all of Arthur Abraham's fights, Abraham starts slow. He's not a volume puncher. He kind of reminds me in the ring of Lennox Lewis. He's a thinking man's fighter. He sits there, is figuring out patterns as the fight goes along. He spends rounds watching his opponent, figuring out how he can do things. Then he fakes punches to set up other punches. He is a devastating offensive fighter with an 80% knockout ratio. But the way to beat a fighter like that, the way to beat a technician, is with hand speed and volume. And I believe that's exactly what Jermain Taylor brings to the table. Taylor isn't going to worry about the nuances of the sport. He's going to come out. He's going to throw a lot of punches. He's going to work behind one of the best jabs in the sport. And the thing with Taylor that is deceptive, and let's think about his recent losses. The thing with Taylor that is deceptive is while he looks fluid in the ring, and he is very fluid in the ring, he is packing power. Let's remember, he dropped Kelly Pavlik. Pavlik got up and then dropped him and took his title. But he dropped Kelly Pavlik. He dropped unbeaten Carl Froch. Carl Froch, of course, got up, stopped Taylor in the later rounds. My point to you is, against a low-output fighter like Arthur Abraham, I believe that Jermain Taylor is going to build up a lead in this fight. Abraham is going to be in there trying for the knockout. He's not going to be throwing a sufficient volume of punches, in my opinion, to win the early rounds. Forget the fact that the fight's in Germany. That doesn't matter to Jermain Taylor because Taylor is just in there. I don't believe he spends a lot of time, waiting for openings and stuff like that. He's just in there letting his hands fly. You saw how he beat Bernard Hopkins twice. While Hopkins was in there trying to figure out the method to the madness, Taylor was just in there overwhelming his opponent, kind of like Joe Calzaghe does. Now, the Achilles heel with Taylor is that against a fighter who knows how to apply pressure, Taylor wilts in the second half of the fight. You saw him wilt against Bernard Hopkins. It's just that Hopkins, at that point in his career, didn't have enough left to fight all 3 minutes of every round. Bernard Hopkins, it's an open secret in boxing, Bernard Hopkins picks his spots. It's only against a fighter who doesn't feint much, like Kelly Pavlik, where Bernard Hopkins is able to completely dominate an entire fight. Against someone with quick reflexes and volume, Bernard Hopkins, even though he won most of the later rounds of his fights against Jermain Taylor, just wasn't able to be active enough to really push Taylor. Carl Froch, quite frankly, the Froch-Taylor fight, if Carl Froch doesn't get the knockout late, Carl Froch loses that fight. Okay, Jermain Taylor, quite frankly, had distanced himself from Froch. Froch literally needed to close that distance, and Froch, being a great fighter, did so masterfully in the last round. Now, Arthur Abraham, all I can say is Abraham hasn't been tested like he's going to be tested in this fight. Because Abraham has the punch that he has, and keep in mind, he's moving up from 160 to 168, so it's an open question on whether his punch will carry with him to 168. In fact, if you look at Abraham's recent fights, his fights against Oral, that went 10 rounds. Abraham didn't knock the guy out cold. Other guys have actually been able to go the distance with Abraham. Assuming Abraham's punch carries with him to 168, there is a chance that Abraham wins this fight by knockout. I believe the straddle in this one is to take Jermain Taylor to win by decision and Arthur Abraham to win by knockout. Abraham is extremely hard to knock out, although I will say this. Jermain Taylor has bang. I, quite frankly, wouldn't be too surprised if Taylor stopped this fight early. If you get the right odds, I would take Taylor to win, and I'm assuming Taylor's going to be at least a 2-1 underdog. I'd take Taylor to win, and I'd hedge it with Arthur Abraham to win by knockout. But if you're not getting the generous enough odds, I would take Taylor to win by decision, and I would take Arthur Abraham to win by knockout. In either event, I believe Taylor has a legitimate shot in this one, and I say so as someone who picked Carl Froch when Carl Froch fought Jermain Taylor. That video's still up on YouTube. It's just a style thing. It doesn't come down to anything other than styles. Understand, my own personal belief is that no one is unbeatable, and that matchups aren't transferable. So just because I feel that Taylor might beat undefeated Arthur Abraham, that doesn't mean that I necessarily believe that Taylor would beat everyone Abraham has won against, or that Abraham would lose to everyone that Taylor has beaten. Okay, let us know what you think. Leave a message for us here on YouTube, and visit us at gamblersadvisory.com. Good luck.